The darkest hour, humanity's first step. The galaxy was on the brink of annihilation. The war had raged for centuries, and all hope seemed lost. Earth had been watching from the sidelines, its leaders observing the desperate calls for help coming from the peaceful Galactic Federation. An alliance that had once united countless species across the stars was now in peril, fighting a seemingly unbeatable enemy, the Kago Empire. The Kago Empire, with their ruthless tactics and superior technology, had slowly swept across the galaxy. Their fleet was unmatched, their weapons far beyond anything humanity had ever known. The Federation, a union of diverse alien races, had fought valiantly, but it had become clear that their once mighty forces were losing ground. Entire star systems had fallen to the might of the Kago, and even the Federation's capital was no longer safe. But amid the chaos, the Federation's most desperate message yet rang through the galaxy, reaching Earth's distant ears. All is lost. The Kago have broken through our final defenses. This is our darkest hour. If anyone can hear this, send help immediately. The static that followed spoke volumes. There was no longer any room for hope. Captain Evelyn Carter stood on the observation deck of the flagship Endeavour, gazing out into the vast expanse of space. She had received the message and felt the weight of it settle heavily on her shoulders. The Federation was on the edge of extinction, and Earth was the only remaining power that could provide help. The question was, could humans really make a difference? Could they truly fight alongside the galactic powers to turn the tide of this war? Captain Carter had spent years commanding humanity's fleet, yet nothing could have prepared her for this moment. The Endeavour was Earth's most advanced warship, equipped with the latest in human engineering. But even it seemed like a mere speck against the vast Kago armada. The Federation had not yet learned to trust humans. After all, they had never seen Earth's military might in action on a galactic scale. It was a known fact that humans were a fledgling species compared to the ancient civilizations of the Federation. The galaxy had dismissed them as insignificant at best, but Captain Carter was determined to prove them wrong. Standing by her side was Commander Ryland Brooks, her closest ally. He was a tall man, with dark hair and eyes that mirrored the uncertainty in her own. Brooks had fought in countless battles across Earth's colonies, but the war in space was something entirely different. He turned to her, his voice low. "Are we really doing this, Captain? They don't even believe we can make a dent. The Federation thinks we're just a bunch of underdogs." Captain Carter met his gaze, her resolve hardening. "I've had enough of being underestimated, Ryland. We've got one shot at this, and we're taking it. The Federation is too weak to stand on its own. They need us, and we need to prove that humans aren't to be ignored. If we fail, not only will we lose this war, but Earth will be left vulnerable, completely exposed to the Kago. It's not just about saving the Federation. It's about securing humanity's place in the stars." She paused for a moment, watching the stars flicker outside the viewport. "We've spent too long watching from the sidelines. It's time to show them what we can do." Brooks nodded, a spark of determination lighting up his face. He had always believed in the potential of humanity. The Federation's soldiers were skeptical, but they hadn't witnessed the grit and resilience that Earth's forces were capable of. That was about to change. The Endeavour's engines roared to life as the ship prepared for its jump into hyperspace. Captain Carter took one last look at Earth's fading image on the monitor, knowing this would be the beginning of something monumental. As the ship traversed the stars, Captain Carter felt the weight of history pressing down on her. This mission would determine not just the fate of the Federation, but also humanity's future in the galaxy. Would they rise to the occasion, or would they be crushed under the might of the Kago? The journey to the Federation's last stronghold, a massive space station orbiting a dying star, was long and tense. The crew, a mix of humans and Federation soldiers, worked together in strained silence. There were no allies in this war, only soldiers who would either survive together or die separately. When the Endeavour finally arrived at the Federation base, The station appeared both magnificent and haunting. It was a symbol of their collective struggle, a beacon of hope that was quickly losing its shine. The station's docks were filled with wounded ships, their hulls battered by relentless assaults. The Federation's fleet had been whittled down to a handful of ships, none of which looked capable of taking on the Kago Empire. Captain Carter knew that the arrival of the human fleet would either inspire hope or further instill doubt in the Federation's leadership. She gathered her senior officers and began her briefing. The Kago Empire is not just a threat to us. They are a threat to every living being in the galaxy, Carter said, her voice steady but filled with urgency. This station is the last line of defense. Our allies are running out of time, and so are we. It's time we show the galaxy what humans are made of. The Federation's command officers, a mix of skeptical aliens from various species, exchanged uneasy glances. They had heard about humanity's fierce battles on Earth, but this was a new kind of war, a war fought not just with weapons, but with strategy, willpower, and pure determination. One of the Federation officers, a tall alien with silver scales, spoke up. "You're asking us to put our faith in your people, Captain. I don't know if that's a risk we can afford." Captain Carter turned to face him, her eyes unwavering. "You don't have a choice. The Kago won't stop until they've destroyed everything. But together, we might just have a chance. It's time to fight back." With that, the humans began to integrate their technologies with the Federation's, working quickly to prepare for the inevitable assault. Tensions ran high, not only because of the looming battle, but also because of the uneasy cooperation between the two forces. The Federation's soldiers watched the humans closely, unsure whether they could trust these newcomers from a distant world. And the humans, in turn, grew frustrated with the Federation's bureaucracy and reluctance to embrace their methods. But Captain Carter knew that unity was their only hope. If they were to have any chance of victory, they would need to work together, blending human ingenuity with the Federation's advanced technology. As the final preparations were made, Captain Carter felt a surge of determination. This was humanity's moment. If they succeeded, it would be a turning point for the entire galaxy. But if they failed, the Kago Empire would march on, unstoppable. The weight of the universe seemed to hang on her shoulders, but she knew there was no turning back. With a deep breath, Captain Carter gave the command. The human fleet powered up its engines, and the Endeavor led the charge into the darkness of space. The galaxy would soon learn that humanity, against all odds, had finally arrived. The battlefield awakens, humanity's trial by fire. The moment the human fleet emerged from hyperspace, the crew aboard the Endeavor felt the gravity of their mission settle upon them. It wasn't just the weight of the Federation's hopes resting on their shoulders. It was the weight of humanity's future. The stars before them shimmered like cold, distant diamonds, hiding the darkness that was about to unfold. The Federation's base, the final stronghold against the Kago, loomed ahead like a wounded animal preparing for its last stand. Captain Evelyn Carter stood in the command center, her fingers gently gripping the armrests of her chair. The station was more than just a military outpost. It was a symbol of resistance, a place where countless races had fought side by side to protect their worlds. Now, it was the last beacon of hope for the Federation. But without reinforcements, even this shining monument to unity was doomed to fall. "Captain," said Commander Ryland Brooks, his voice thick with tension, "we've made it, but the Kago will be here soon. We don't have much time to prepare." Carter nodded, her mind racing. The Kago Empire was relentless. Their forces were vast, their technology ancient and deadly. The Federation's defenses, though formidable, were no match for the overwhelming might of the Kago fleet. Earth's forces, though fierce, were largely untested in intergalactic warfare. But what humans lacked in technology, they made up for it in ingenuity, tenacity, and an unwillingness to give up. Carter had to believe that would be enough. The Endeavor's sensors pinged as Kago vessels appeared on the edge of the station's range. Hundreds of sleek black ships, each one bristling with weapons, emerged from the shadows of a nearby asteroid belt. Their presence was like a wave of darkness sweeping across the stars, and Carter could almost feel the weight of their approach. The Kago were coming, and they were coming fast. All ships, prepare for battle. Captain Carter's voice was calm but firm. This is it, people. We stand or fall together. Across the command deck, the crew moved with practiced efficiency, each person knowing their role in the coming fight. The human fleet was smaller than the Federation's, but it was more adaptable. Human ships, though not as advanced as the Kagos, had a resilience and flexibility that the alien technology lacked. And the crew of the Endeavour had something that the Kago did not: heart. But even as the human fleet mobilized, doubts lingered in the back of Carter's mind. She couldn't shake the thought that they might be too late. The Federation's leadership, though supportive of humanity's involvement, had hesitated for too long. The Kago were already too entrenched, too prepared. How could Earth, who had never before fought on this scale, possibly expect to tip the balance? The Federation's response. As the Kago fleet neared, Captain Carter's comms console lit up. It was General Elan, the Federation's highest military commander, a tall alien with silver fur and sharp angular features. His deep voice echoed through the bridge. Carter, this is your moment. I hope your people are ready. The Kago will not hesitate to destroy everything in their path. Carter nodded, trying to keep her nerves under control. We're ready, General. The human fleet is in position. We'll hold the line. The general's voice crackled with a mixture of hope and skepticism. We'll need your ingenuity, Captain. The Kago are experts in psychological warfare. They'll try to break us long before they engage us directly. Carter glanced over at Ryland, who was already running through the data, his fingers flying across the console. We can handle it, General. Just give us the word. The Federation's ships took their positions, interspersed with the human fleet. For the first time in centuries, the races of the Federation, beings from different worlds, with differing strengths and weaknesses, were united against a common enemy. But unity could only go so far. The coming battle would test them all. The tension in the air was palpable as the two fleets drifted closer. The Kago ships were sleek and menacing, their jagged designs evoking a sense of fear and inevitability. These were not just ships, they were symbols of their creator's might. The Kago Empire had conquered countless worlds with these vessels, and now they were here to crush what little remained of the Federation's resistance. The human fleet's ships, although fewer in number, were designed with unconventional tactics in mind. Their hulls were reinforced with durable alloys, and their weapons, though not as advanced as the Kago's plasma cannons, were capable of immense firepower. The human ships had been crafted for survival, designed to withstand the harshest environments and most unpredictable combat situations. We have incoming fire, Ryland shouted, his voice cutting through the tension. The first salvo from the Kago fleet hit the Federation's defensive shields, shaking the station. The Federation's fleet returned fire with concentrated energy beams, but it was clear that the Kago were ready. They countered with overwhelming firepower, forcing the Federation ships into evasive maneuvers. We need to strike at their weak points, Carter said, her mind already working through possible strategies. Get our ships into position. Let's not give them a straight shot. We're going to have to be more creative than that. Ryland's eyes lit up. I've got it. If we can create enough chaos, we might be able to slip past their front lines and target their power sources. Carter's heart raced as she realized the magnitude of what Ryland was suggesting. It was risky, almost too risky, but it was their best shot. If they could strike at the heart of the Kago's fleet, they could cripple their ability to sustain the battle. We'll do it, Carter decided. Make it happen. The battle unfolds. The Endeavour and the human fleet moved quickly, dodging enemy fire, weaving through the battlefield with agility that the Kago were not expecting. Their ships were built for brute force, not agility, and that gave humanity the upper hand in these early moments. The Federation ships, though technologically superior in some aspects, struggled to adapt to the unpredictable tactics the humans employed. The human ships darted and weaved, firing their weapons in quick bursts and then disappearing into the chaos of the battle. It was a strategy of speed, deception, and precision. For every Kego ship they damaged, another took its place. The Federation's forces were holding on, but they were losing ships faster than they could replace them. The Kego were relentless, pressing their attack with a single-minded ferocity. But the humans, against all odds, were holding their own. Carter's fingers danced over the tactical console, coordinating the movements of her fleet, pushing them to take risks and strike fast. She could feel the adrenaline coursing through her veins as the chaos of the battlefield unfolded before her. Suddenly, an explosion rocked the Endeavor, knocking everyone off balance. The lights flickered, and alarms blared. "We've taken a direct hit," Ryland shouted. "Shields are at 40%. Carter gritted her teeth. "We're not stopping now. Get us back into the fight." The human fleet continued to press forward, refusing to back down, despite the overwhelming odds. Carter's mind raced with strategies. Her crew fought with everything they had. There was no turning back now. And then, just as it seemed the tide might turn in the Kego's favor, a miracle happened. The Federation's fleet launched a surprise counterattack, using the diversion created by the human forces to land a devastating blow against the Kego's flagship. The Kego were not prepared for the ferocity of this counterattack, and for the first time in the battle, the Federation gained the upper hand. The Kego flagship staggered, its shields faltering under the barrage. "We've got them on the ropes," Carter shouted. "All ships, keep up the pressure." The human fleet's fierce determination and the Federation's unyielding resolve had created a glimmer of hope. The Kego might not have been defeated yet, but they had been forced to retreat for the first time in centuries. It was a victory, a hard-fought, bloody victory, but it was only the beginning. The fragile alliance, trust on the edge of the blade. The hum of the Endeavor's engines was a welcome sound as the ship limped back to the Federation station, battered but victorious. Captain Evelyn Carter stood before the massive viewport of the bridge, her eyes tracing the glowing streaks of the stars beyond. They had done it. Against all odds, they had forced the Kego to retreat, if only for a brief moment. But even as her crew celebrated, Carter knew this victory came at a high cost. The Federation had lost nearly a third of their remaining fleet, and humanity's forces, though resilient, had sustained heavy damage as well. They had bought the Federation some time, but the Kego were not finished. "Captain, you've done it," Ryland Brooks said, his voice filled with awe. "You've proven them wrong. The Kego never expected this." Carter didn't respond right away. The victory felt hollow in her chest. Yes, they had held their ground, but there was a bitter aftertaste to their success. The Kego had retreated, but not because they were beaten. They were regrouping. And if there was one thing Carter knew about the Kego, it was that they would return with vengeance. "Not yet, Ryland," Carter replied, her voice low. "The war is far from over." The aftermath of the battle. The Endeavor docked at the Federation station in the dead of night. The station's lights flickered dimly, reflecting the weary faces of the Federation soldiers who had witnessed the carnage of the recent battle. The Federation's high command had already begun assessing the damage, and there was no time to rest. With the Kego Empire's forces still a looming threat, every moment counted. As the crew disembarked, Carter couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted. Despite their success, the atmosphere among the Federation officers was tense. The battle had been a test, and while the humans had proven themselves, the distrust between the two factions remained thick. In the war room, General Elan, the Federation's grizzled leader, stood with his arms crossed, scrutinizing the human officers who had just stepped into the room. He was an imposing figure, his silver fur almost shimmering under the harsh lights. His species, the Norn, had a long history of intergalactic warfare, and his eyes bore the weight of centuries of battle. "You did well, Captain Carter," General Elan began, his voice heavy with skepticism and respect. "But we cannot afford to let this victory cloud our judgment. The Kago will come again, and we must be ready. Carter met his gaze, her voice steady. I know, General. The battle we won was just a skirmish in the grander scheme of things. We've bought time, but we need a real strategy to win this war. Elan's expression softened, but only slightly. The Federation is willing to fight, Captain, but you must understand. Your people are still seen as outsiders. Trust is a luxury we can't afford. Carter's fists clenched at her sides. Then let me earn your trust. We can't win this alone, but together we stand a chance. The tension in the room was palpable as both sides wrestled with their emotions: hope, doubt, pride, and fear. Finally, General Elan let out a heavy sigh, his shoulders sagging. Fine. We'll continue this alliance. But remember, Captain Carter, one misstep, and it could all fall apart. The Kago won't hesitate to exploit any weakness. The conversation ended there, but Carter knew that they were on a knife's edge. The fragile alliance between humans and the Federation could collapse at any moment. The Federation had reluctantly accepted Earth's help, but trust would be a long time in coming. Every decision, every battle would be scrutinized. Any mistake could unravel everything. Betrayal in the ranks. The next few days were filled with tactical meetings, repairs, and brief moments of uneasy camaraderie. The human fleet had suffered heavy losses, but the Federation had promised their assistance with the rebuilding process. Carter and her crew worked tirelessly, doing everything they could to shore up the fleet's defenses and prepare for the inevitable next wave of Kago attacks. However, as Carter walked through the corridors of the Federation base, she couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. The Federation soldiers who had once treated her with a mix of curiosity and skepticism now regarded her with more wariness. Whispers echoed in the hallways, eyes darting away when they caught sight of her. It was subtle, but it was there. The humans weren't just fighting the Kago. They were fighting for acceptance. The war was a test not only of their military prowess, but of their ability to prove they belonged in this new vast galaxy. One evening, as Captain Carter sat in her quarters, going over strategy reports, Lieutenant Ryland Brooks knocked on her door. He entered, looking grave. "Captain, we've got a problem," he said, his voice urgent. "We've received reports from Federation intelligence. There's talk of a traitor." Carter frowned. "A traitor? Within our ranks?" Brooks nodded. "It's not just that. There's a rumor that someone in the Federation High Command has been feeding information to the Kago. It might explain how they were able to stage their surprise attack on our supply lines last week." Carter's heart sank. A spy. It was the last thing they needed. The Federation was already on edge, and if a traitor was involved, it could destroy what little trust remained. "We can't let this fester, Ryland," Carter said, her voice sharp. "We need to find out who's behind this before it's too late." The search for the mole. The next few days were filled with covert operations and quiet investigations. Carter had enlisted the help of her most trusted officers, including Lieutenant Emma Reed, her second-in-command, to help root out the traitor. They combed through the Federation's intelligence network, searching for any inconsistencies, any clues that might point to the mole. But the search wasn't easy. The Kago were cunning, and their spies were masters of subterfuge. Whoever the traitor was, they had covered their tracks well. Carter spent sleepless nights reviewing logs, messages, and reports. She would not let a traitor tear apart their fragile alliance, not when so much was at stake. Late one evening, as Carter pored over encrypted communications between Federation commanders, she found something unsettling. A code, a series of numbers that, at first glance, seemed to be a routine status update. But something about it didn't sit right. She sent it to Lieutenant Reed for analysis, hoping her instincts were wrong. The next morning, Reed confirmed her worst fear. The code was a direct message to the Kago Empire. Someone in the Federation had been leaking vital information about their fleet movements and defense strategies. The traitor was in their midst, and they had to act fast. Carter's pulse quickened. "We need to find them. Reed, Whoever it is, they'll be under the radar. We'll need to approach this carefully, or we'll risk tipping them off. A game of shadows. The investigation began in earnest. Emma Reed, along with a small team of trusted soldiers, conducted covert surveillance on key Federation officers. The traitor was smart, careful, and manipulative. They had wormed their way into the heart of the Federation, hidden among those who were supposed to be allies. It wasn't until Carter received a coded transmission from an anonymous source that the first real lead appeared. The message contained only a single sentence: "Look to the shadows." It was cryptic, but it was enough to push Carter in the right direction. She instructed Reeve and her team to investigate the Federation's darkest corners, the places where secrets were kept and deals were made. It was there that they would find the traitor hiding in plain sight. As Reed dug deeper, she uncovered a conspiracy that reached higher than Carter could have imagined. The traitor wasn't just some low-ranking officer. They were a member of the Federation's high command, someone who had betrayed the very people they were sworn to protect. Carter couldn't believe it. The stakes had just been raised, and the tension within the Federation had reached a boiling point. Trust had already been frayed to the breaking point, and now, with the traitor's identity close at hand, the alliance between humans and the Federation was more fragile than ever. In the shadows of the Federation, the game of betrayal had begun in earnest, and the fate of the galaxy hung in the balance.